So we're going over possible grants that one can go for. Now let's talk about what we call a letter of intent, letter of inquiry, or some people call it a concept paper. And let's look at what it consist of. So for me, read the different parts of the letter of inquiry.
Components of letter of intent or inquiry. Cover sheet, maximum of 2 pages. Name and address of organization, name of director and contact persons, telephone and fax numbers, email, web addresses. 1 paragraph summarizing the organization's mission, and one paragraph summarizing the purpose of the request, the relationship of the request to the organization's mission. Dollar total of annual organizational budget and fiscal year. Dollar total of project budget, if other than general support. Dollar amount being requested. Dollar total committed from other funding sources. Time frame for conducting this work, and dates for which grant funds would be needed, beginning and ending dates. Tax exemption status.
So you can see this in the cover letter. These are all the things we need. This for the cover letter. Now, what's the next section?
Narrative, maximum of 3 pages, should discuss the following: the purpose of request and the problem or need being addressed, the population or community served by your program or organization, and how it is involved in the design and implementation of your work, how you will address the problem or need you have identified, and how your work promotes systemic change.
When they say systemic change, how do you change systems in order to make them work better? And finally,
financial, a 1-page budget showing all funding sources received, requested, and expected, and all expenses.
Good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And all expenses for your organization or the project to be funded.
So we see that they suggest that you put together, let me see, 2 pages, 3 pages, 6 pages for your letter of inquiry. I say if we can do it in 1 page, we do it in 1 page. But they suggest up to 6 pages, 2 for the cover letter, 3 for the narrative. And whenever you're doing a grant like this, you always focus on the narrative section. Okay, so we're going to look some more at a letter of intent, but this time we're going to break it down piece by piece. Let me come out. Any question before we move?
No, sir.
Okay, let me come out of this. And let me bring this up. You go here. Have you ever heard of a letter of intent?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, let's go here and let's go to the first part of the letter of intent. Okay, let me okay, can you see it?
Oh, the letter's over here.
Yeah, what do you see?
Right now I'm just seeing all your files over here on part 1 and part 2 and
so you can let me
the letter popped up on the other side.
Go here, and this is what I want you to see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what you saw earlier was the different parts of the letter of inquiry.
Okay.
So we're going through now part 1. And this basically talks about having an understanding of what a letter of inquiry is. And read that for me.
How to use the LOI. Developing a strong letter of inquiry is an essential step to securing a grant award. Drafting a letter of inquiry for each program or project that needs it, as well as for general operating support, is a smart first step when you are trying to secure grant dollars. The LOI should summarize the project idea, usually more than 3 to 5 pages. LOI can serve multiple purposes, including as a working paper to help research and identify appropriate grant makers, talking paper to help engage your staff, board, and other possible partners and collaborators, letter of inquiry to potential grant makers, and fully proposal to grant makers that only require a minimal application.
So as you can see, the LOI can serve several purposes, not only for potential grant writing, but also the LOI can be served as a talking paper when you're talking to somebody, or working paper when you're doing research. Okay, continue on related to development.
Challenges: you demonstrate your commitment to pursuing the idea, provide the opportunity for you to organize your thoughts on paper, and identifies the information, commitments, and additional research necessary to create a winning proposal.
Okay, that winning proposal, that's all I want to hear. Continue.
The LOI usually consists of 6 to 8 sections. If the grant maker has specific guidelines they want you to adhere to, be sure and follow them. But if you don't, you got to move it over a little bit.
Okay, let me see.
At the bottom, I think you can kind of.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Just slide it. There you go. As I said, usually consists of 8 sections. Is the grant maker specific guidelines? They want you to adhere to, be sure and follow them. But if you do not have guidelines, the following sections can help you organize your LOI.
I want to talk about the following sections, but I only want you to read not the definition, but what the sections are.
Okay. Consists of a title page.
Good.
Introduction.
Don't. Yeah, go ahead.
Statement of need. Organizational history. Project narrative. Timeline. Budget. Funding strategy.
Okay, now let's go through each one individually.
Title page. This page.
Oh, no. I'm going to actually go to the title page now to give the definition, because people just don't realize how important the title is. So we're just going to talk about the title. Hold on one second. Let me come out of here. Let's go back here. Okay, let me come back over here. Let's go here. Now, where's that title page? This is it. Okay, the title page.
Okay. Begin the LOI with a title page that includes relevant information such as date, contact person, phone numbers, and addresses. Make good use of the title page on the LOI by adding a graphic photo can be compelling, as are vignettes or quotations.
Now, photos are important only if they allow you to do it. And you're going to do that as an attachment. And the photos you want to do is to show people that benefit from your service. For example, if you're doing a project in which you're working with kids on, like you're doing related to video, you want to take a picture. So when you're sending that grant, you got a picture showing what your program is all about. If you're feeding the homeless, you want to take a picture of, the people that you're feeding. Okay, let's talk about what's important about a project name and why is this so important?
Take the time to develop a great title for your project. Remember that you want the title to reflect the outcomes of the overall project. If possible, try to use the title to tweak the reader's interest. Stay away from boring and non-descriptive titles. Try to give the person sitting at the table fighting to keep your project in the to be funded pile a handle. If you use a long, unimaginative title, that person has trouble even remembering it, much less arguing your case. Using a short title, such as Watersheds, gives them something to hold on to while they fight to get your proposal funded. If you can come up with a good short title, you can then add a descriptive line below it that will provide a bit more detail on the project itself.
Read that again.
If you can come up with a good short title, you can then add a descriptive line below it that will provide a bit more detail on the project itself.
Excellent.
Here's a few examples. Science in the Dark, rebuilding the Chapman Observatory at the University of Washington. Title, Watersheds, a Tri-County Development Planning Project. Title, Mining the Waste Stream, a model project to promote recycling in alopecia. Higher Ground is the title, moving our community out of the flood plain. To select a good title, hold a brainstorming session at your next staff or board meeting. This exercise almost always results in new and imaginative ways to introduce the grant maker to your project or program.
They say, what's in the word? Well, everything is in the word. That's why as you begin to put together your title, make sure in that title it talks about what you do. So definitely you want to make sure it talks about what you do, and then you could describe it. Like for example, if you a group that's fighting street violence, your title could be Stopping Senseless Killing in Baltimore City. See, that's going to catch a person. So you want to make sure that title goes towards people being able to see what you're trying to do. So that being said, let's go to the next section now. And then I'm going to send you this also.
Okay.
All right, let's go here. Let's go here. And come back over here. The second part of the letter of inquiry is what is it called?
Introduction.
Introduction. Let me slide this over. The reason why I had to slide it over because I had to blow this up 200.
Gotcha.
Just to be able, because anything less than that you wouldn't be able to see.
Gotcha.
Okay, read the first paragraph.
This section of the LOI introduces the reader to the present situation and can be quite short. The introduction serves as a way of communicating to the potential grant maker the social, economic, and environmental context of your project or program. It provides the reader with a brief description of your geographic and social situation, with which your reader may be unfamiliar, especially when the grant maker is from a different region of the country.
You always assume that the person don't know who you are. and what you do. That's why you have to pint it to that person, to give him the current situation. Read the next paragraph.
Though it may seem backward, it's often beneficial to write the introduction after drafting the need statement and the project narrative. Once those are written, you'll know exactly what general information will most appropriately introduce the reader to the request.
Now, it makes sense. Instead of just doing an introduction first, you do that after you do the
Need statement.
The need statement and the project narrative. Now you got something to put into the introduction. Introductions are very important because this is depending upon how good you put together that introduction, that's going to determine whether or not they're going to keep on reading your proposal or simply throw it out the way. Okay, let's go into how to write the introduction.
The introduction is concise and contains information that captures your reader's attention and interest. It introduces the subject matter, setting, and principal players, and provides some background to the issue you will present in your project and need description. Here are a few rules of thumb about the introduction. Keep it short. Describe your situation. Make it compelling. Engage your reader.
Always tell the story. Don't just write the grant, but tell the story. That's how you get funders to fund you, if you tell the story. Let me see if there's anything else I need to pull from this introduction. Let's look at. Yeah, read this right here when it say beware.
Be aware that the introduction you write for a foundation can be dramatically different from the one you will write for a corporate donor. Why? Because a foundation's interests are going to center on your clientele and the community you serve, as well as on the problem you need you face. And while these issues are also important to a corporate donor, they will also want to know how their corporation's name can reach a lot of people. So a corporate donor might be interested in the demographics of the region, the number of visitors, and the visibility of their name and logo. Basically, they want to understand the market you may conceivably reach for them. Also, keep in mind that an introduction written for an in-state grant maker is much different than one written for an out-of-state grant maker. Out-of-state grant makers often need to understand the geographic of a place such as a wilderness area, rural farming community, or inner city neighborhood, and the demographic and economic profile, such as ethnicity, high unemployment rate, lower income population, if they are to make an informed decision.
So what we know is that a corporation is more interested in getting their name out there.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go for a corporation, and that's why I said earlier that not this session, but in the earlier session, that you always want to recognize whoever give you the funds. Because foundations and corporations look for different things. That's why you have to make sure you appeal to the funder, be it a foundation or a corporation, or even a government proposal. They look for different things. Let me see if we have anything else here. Okay, read this right here, and then we're going to go to the next section.
what is it?
Here's an example of short and compelling introduction.
This introduction sets the stage for the grantmaker understands the climate of the area because the request is to fund the reparation of religious icons that have been damaged by inclement weather of the geographically isolated place. The Aleutian Islands extend west from Alaska for more than 1,400 miles, reaching to within 500 miles of the Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia, a rugged volcanic archipelago. The Archelians form a cyclonic frontier between the cold Bering Sea to the north and the warmer Pacific Ocean to the south. Two climates.
Let's stop here because this is getting too boring. But you see the point they're trying to make in terms of the introduction. Now let's look at another introduction. Let's start with every year.
Every year when the sun returns to the far north, that land of birch groves and caribou herds, families abandon the security of their log for the impairments and freedom of the fish camp, waiting by the water's edge as rivers of ice transform from solid slabs to millions of colliding, resonating shares race towards the sea. They make ready. Once again, the way was open. The salmon was beginning their quest upstream, bringing a harvest so rich it would sustain the families through the long Arctic night.
So this particular one is focused towards indigenous culture, and they begin to give the introduction. Now they go on to talk about the young
and old together. They build weirds, strung nets, carved spears, hung drying racks, and laid basket traps, as did their fathers before them. The elders passed on the tribe's wisdom to the young, taking each child by the hand, demonstrating how to fabricate and implement of their survival from the bounty of the earth. At the long day's end, in the unfading Arctic twilight, adults and children gather by the campfire, crowding in close to hear the elders spin stories, tales of ancestors, legends of the bear and the raven, memories of the catch of the year gone by, predictions of a time yet to come. In this way, knowledge was passed from one generation to the next, and the indigenous people of Alaska survived for more than 10,000 years.
Notice how they tell the story. See, they tell them the story.
Yes.
So this letter of introduction is good. They start first by talking about the geographics, and then they go to the particulars as it relates to the organization. Okay, that being said, let's skip to the next section. Any question before we move on?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go to 4. Okay, I want to make sure I'm doing it individually because every part has a different reason. Let me go here. Now, what is the next part?
Statement of need.
Okay, give me 2 research methods you can use to gather information related to the statement of the need.
Quantitative research and qualitative research.
Excellent. Okay, so read from the top down to here.
It is extremely important for the LOI to articulate the problem or need clearly and develop a compelling argument for funding. It is also important to articulate opportunity for the grant maker to invest in your project. You may want to consider one or more of the following methods to document the current situation. Perform a needs survey. Cite statistics from articles and research. Quote community leaders or experts in the field. Use case histories. Describe a national need and focus it on your area. State needs in terms of one person, such as a village, resident, or group member.
Now, you can also look at news articles. So you can gather information related to the statement of the problem by doing news articles. News articles tend to be more local. And when you're doing a needs statement, you want to make sure you got as much local information as is possible. I think I'm going to move to the next section because we know what a needs statement is. They're just giving some examples of needs statement. Let's just read one example starting from here to here.
Okay. If you are having trouble coming up with a way to open your needs statement, do a little research on the history of the problem or need. Sometimes a historic comparison that everyone can relate to can help open the reader to the problem and help demonstrate the need. For example, the unemployment rate during the Great Depression in the 1920s was 24.8%. The federal government can declare a national disaster when unemployment rates are between 9 and 18%. Employment and Training Labor News, 2008. Today, the American Indian unemployment rate in Southwest U.S. is at 18.3%, almost double the general population. Unemployment rate of 9.7% reported by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in June 2009.
I want you to I want to emphasize how they quote sources. So if they put together a fact, they're going to show you where they got that data from. I think that's it. I don't think nothing else that I need to emphasize about this. So let's go to the next section. Okay, what is the next section?
Organizational history.
Excellent. Read what it consists of.
Organizational history should establish the organization's credibility and its qualifications for receiving funding. Here's a checklist. What you need to be concerned with in this section. Establish who is applying for funds. State organizational purpose and goals. Describe programs and activities. Define clients or constituents. Provide evidence of accomplishments. Offer quotations and endorsements in support of accomplishments. Support qualifications in the area of activity for which funds are sought, e.g., research, training, etc.
So that this part is very important in that you give the organizational history. Even if, for example, your organization is fairly new, related to the Christian Brothers. However, the person who's the CEO has a history that expands 20, 30 years.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how you write that when you talk about history. Whereas we might be fairly new, the CEO background consists of, and then you give your background, bam, and that's how you sell a deal.
Okay.
People, what they do is say, I don't know what to write. We're just getting started. I said, don't worry about just getting started. Rely on people that sit on your board that have a track record of doing something and use them. You say, while we've been around for X, the experience that we bring to the table is 30, 40, 50 years. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay, let's continue. I'm not going to read all of this. You can look at this when you get this part of the presentation. I want to move to the next section, which is 6. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, now let's go to section 6. Okay. Do you remember the last section we've gone over?
Organizational.
Good. Organization, we went over statement of the problem. We also went over the title, the name itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to get to project narrative and read what that consists of.
Project narrative is a description of the project or program you propose, its goals and objectives, and a brief plan of action. The project narrative should can't hardly see the rest of it's cut off. Thank you. Should make a clear connection or transition from the need statement to your organization's capacity to solve the problem. This is a great place to use your mission statement, or at least a quote from the mission statement.
Yeah, you should. At this point, you should definitely in your project narrative start off with your project, with your organization mission, and then this project narrative follows the statement of the problem. Let's go for instance.
For instance, it is the mission of our organization to address this need, followed by a quotation from your mission statement or organizational goals. Show that you know your field, and don't say your project is unique unless it really is. If you are undertaking something new or something you have no previous experience with, provide some evidence to inspire the grant maker's confidence that you can do it. Having an advisor who is well schooled or well known in this area of work can go a long way towards establishing your credibility with the grant maker. The project narrative often begins with the goal, followed by a summary of the objectives. The reader now knows what you intend to do and how you intend to do it. Goals should be visionary but achievable within the context of your request.
What are some goals?
Some goals are fairly specific, such as to increase the participation of youth ages 9 through 15 throughout Baylor County to embrace reading as a daily activity. This project is probably a $100,000 plus project. The project is achievable within the context of the size of the requests. Other goals are more visionary, such as to give birth to widespread community understanding and support of preserving our cultural heritage and to make it a predominant theme for all projects undertaken at the community level. This might be a request for 500,000 or even $1 million. The goal is much broader and harder to achieve and measures. Each goal should have one or more objectives. Each objective should specify a result not an activity. Describe just one result you want to accomplish. Tell when the result is to be accomplished. Clearly relate to the goal. Be specific, measurable, and verifiable. Allow for flexibility on the part of those implementing it.
In other words, it should be smart. Okay, let's go to the next. And I'm gonna send you this, but it's gonna be 9 different emails.
Okay.
Let me see, what am I at? Yeah. Along with the video.
Okay.
Okay, now let's go back here. Let's go here. Okay, and what is this part?
Timeline.
People take this part for granted.
The timeline marks both the overall project. Will it take 6 months, a year, 2 years, and the use of the specific funds requested. For example, a construction project may take 2 years to complete, but the grant funds you are seeking will be used for the design stage, which may last only 3 months. You need to be clear about both timelines so grant makers knows when you will need the funds and how quickly they will be expended. It is acceptable to keep this section concise in the LOI. Here are 3 distinct examples of timelines for the LOI. Choose the technique that works best for your project. If you know the approximate dates your timelines might read, timeline, January 2010 through March 2010.
Or it could be January 1st through December 31st.
Okay.
This particular grant proposal is asking money for a design stage, which is only going to take 3 months. Although the construction project itself is going to take more than 2 to 3 years. This is what we call a pre-development grant when you're doing real estate development. Okay, let's continue.
Let me see.
We're right here.
Oh, if you know you can't start the project until the funds are received, but have a general idea of how much time the project will take, your timeline might read, timeline, 18 months from start date. If you know some of the specifics of the project, you can summarize these aspects in the timeline. For example, timeline. The composer will be commissioned by June 2010 with delivery of the final score November 2010. Premiere performance of the newly commissioned piece will be held at the Kitchen in NYC in February 2011. A recording of the piece will be made immediately following the performance. The CD is scheduled for release in the fall of 2011.
Notice that timetable was 2010 and 2011 and how they break down what's going to be done during that time phase.
Yes.
Phase. So let's go to number 8. It's a lot of information.
I'm trying to tell you.
Okay, let's go here.
It's all good.
Oh, yes, definitely. Let's go here. Let's go here. Okay. Hold on. Let me move this over. What's the next part?
Budget summary.
Okay.
The budget summary section of the LOI includes the cost for the overall project and the summary of how the funds will be acquired and spent. Remember, your budget is the financial representation of your project, so it must be believable. Rule number 1, don't make up your budget figures. Always do the necessary research to get the cost of the project right. To place your request in context, state your organization's total annual budget and total budget for the program or project. If you are requesting only partial funding from this source, show community support such as in-kind contributions of time, service, and supplies, and discuss your plans for future funding. Make reasonable funding requests with respect to the scope of your project and the grant maker's resources.
I cannot overemphasize when you're doing your proposal to include in-kind services.
Yes,
Not
sir.
only the amount that you're going for, but talk about the in-kind service.
Wow.
For example, when you do that proposal for the equipment, your in-kind service is going to be $50,000, because that's what you would be paid if you was actually running the program, but you're doing it for free. So you're only asking money for your equipment. See how it looks way better now?
Yes, sir.
That. Okay,
Yes,
let me
sir.
see if there's anything else we need to read in here. Yeah, go to how much should you request?
How much should you request to make sure you're not asking the grant maker for too much or too little? You need to review the grant maker's giving profile and history. It can be helpful to look at the grant maker's IRS Form 990 if they have filed one to determine average grant amounts. Never ask on the high side of their giving if this is your first request to the grant maker. Asking the average amount or a bit lower will increase your chances of receiving the grant award.
Read that again.
Asking the average amount or a bit lower will increase your chances of receiving the grant award. If you have received several grants from this grant maker already, then it's fine to ask for a higher amount because you've already established credibility with the grant maker.
Exactly. That means that what some folks do, it's $100,000 grant. So they go through the whole 100,000. You should go for 80 or 90,000 and not the whole 100,000 until you build a rapport with that organization. And you can show, look, you funded me before and we did everything we were supposed to do. So now we asking for the full amount. Okay, now let's go to the next section. And this is going to be the last section. Give me 1 second to even everything up.
Right.
Bring it back. Boom. And what is the next section?
Funding strategy.
All right.
The funding strategy section of the LOI summarizes a plan for continuation after the funds from the grant or others have been expended.
So what are you going to say in your funding sustainability?
That we will continue to write grants.
But even more importantly, you're going to say we've been trained.
We've been trained.
Right. That's the emphasis. You've been trained to write grants. So then, for example, if your grant is from January the 1st to December the 31st, you want to say we're going to start looking for a grant in October. Another grant for October. So as this grant ends, we have another cycle of grant coming in.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Continue.
Let me tell you, not every project needs to address future funding, but it can strengthen your proposal by demonstrating that you won't be dependent upon one funding source forever. Most grant makers are buying a piece of the future. It is in their best interest to see your project continue. If their guidelines don't ask about future funding, you can add this information in the budget summary.
I would always add it anyway.
Always?
Even if they don't ask for it.
Ah, gotcha.
For example, in the request for your equipment, you will put down that our future funding will include program funding for the program itself.
Okay.
So you're letting them know we're just going to you for equipment. And then the next grant is going to go for programming, including salaries. Okay, let's read an example. For example,
if, for example, you are building a new facility and part of that facility will be rented out to a certain organization, then you can mention the organization and its commitment to leasing from you. This particular paragraph might read, the Shelton Food Bank will build a 25,000 square foot facility, of which 3,000 square feet will be leased to the Shelton Community Garden Cooperative. 5-year lease has been negotiated, along with 1 acre of surrounding land for the use of cooperative. This lease will provide $18,000 per year to be used for ongoing maintenance of the facility and surrounding property.
So in this particular case, the organization funded a building. And what they're saying is that they're going to be able to be sustainable because part of that building is going to be rented out to another source that's going to help with paying the rent. So I like how they put this together that, look, we're only going to be using a particular percent of the building. And the other percent is where we got money coming in from people that's going to be renting out the building for whatever the case might be. Okay, so read that last one.
As mentioned, you won't always need to include the funding strategy, but it can help build credibility if it is clear that the amount you are asking for or asking from a particular grant maker won't cover all the costs of a project or ongoing costs. Now get out there, write these LOIs.
Now, give me 2 things. Hold on, let me come out of recording.